Hey everybody, I'm back, and today I'm not really playing a specific deck, though I probably will just be using Night March for the majority of this video. Because, well, Night March is the deck that is often talked about when people talk about these things, and I'll get a slow deck, just to prove my point further. And that is going to be, should this card, Battle Compressor, search your deck for up to 3 cards and discard them, be banned from tournament play? Now, this is a very heated topic, so let's get right into it. First things first, what does Battle Compressor do that makes it so potent? Like with the first ban, Lysander's trump card, it's not really a specific thing that makes, it's not really Battle Compressor itself that makes Battle Compressor broken, if that makes any sense, but rather the ridiculous amounts of sheer damage that you can do with Battle Compressor, especially in these battle compressing decks. 20, 40, 60, 80, 100, 120, 140, 160 on my first turn. So that, in a sense, is why Battle Compressor is being considered banned. Oh, I should have gotten... Oh well, I'm dumb, I make misplays. And now I have a switch, great. So pretty much, it does 3 things that... Yeah, that was stupid of me. Had I got a Night Marcher, I could have Night Marched. But nope. So what Night March does... Or not Night March. Oh, I'm good at talking. Battle Compressor elongates the amount of time turns take. I have seen a Battle Compressing deck turn take upwards of 10 minutes before, which is frankly a bit ridiculous and something I don't think anyone has really seen since Seismitoad Shaman back in the pre-Trump card ban days. And also, it just lets decks go what could be considered too fast. When you've got things like, say, Night March hitting for upwards of 180, 200 damage on the very first turn of the game going second, so their very first turn, does that reach a point where it becomes too broken of a card? Or like Vespi Plume, for instance, without Battle Compressor, you can hit 180 plus damage on your first turn alongside an item lock going first. If you go first, you get a turn 1 item lock. If you go second, well, then you get a turn 1 attack and possibly a second turn item lock. It's more noticeable with Vespi Plume, and it's extremely noticeable with Vespi Plume, but games are beginning to become whoever wins the opening coin flip wins the series. Which, in my opinion, is far too much. I mean, look at Vespi Plume. If they go first, you are getting item locked from the very first turn of the game. It's very hard to come back, considering that it also hits for, I don't know, 180 something damage. And I shouldn't have done that, my bad. Oh well. I never said I was good at this game. So, what people are arguing is that because... Or I guess I'll just get back on my previous topic. I'm good at this. Vespi Plume, if it wins the opening coin flip, can go first, item lock, and then start knocking out big EXs from their second turn, and ultimately win the game extremely quickly. So here's something that actually can and will happen against Vespi Plume. Let's say I call heads, and it flips heads. I choose to go first, get some items, and all that good stuff. The Vespi Plume player scoops, and then they go and decide to go second or first on their turn. They get a turn 1 item lock and a whole bunch of damage on turn 2 when you scoop. Then you go back to your going first, play your items, get set up, and they either scoop or they just have a really, really hard time coming back. Whereas if the Vespi Plume player wins the opening coin flip, well, isn't that great? Then they can go first. They have the first turn advantage, so they go first, item lock you. And then what are you going to do? You're item locked, so you scoop. Then you go first, get set up, they fall behind, and they scoop. Then they choose to go first, and you've just lost yourself a series. I'm not saying this will happen every time, but it is a unfortunately high % chance of happening, which is not good for the game. It's more noticeable with Vespi Plume than Night March, but Night March is kind of similar. It skips the item lock, but I don't know. Just skipping the item lock is not enough to condone. Like, you skip the item lock, sure, but you have a much higher chance of hitting much higher amounts of damage. So, what really is the right answer? I'm gonna be honest, I do think Pro Ban is the way to go. Simply because Night March does 3 things, or not Night March, why do I keep saying Night March? Battle Compressor does 3 things that are bad. It dramatically speeds up the format. Lysander's trump card dramatically slowed down the format, partially because of that crazy Seismitoad, Shaman, Hammers, Laser, Verbank, Headringer, other forms of disruption deck that basically ran you out of resources and tried to murder you with Quaking Punch, and then just trump carded it all back in until they took 6 prizes the slow and painful way. With Battle Compressor, with Battle Compressor engines, you aren't really taking prizes the slow and painful way. You can just take them in 3 turns against 3 EXs. And they surrendered. Like, games can actually last 3 turns, starting from the first turn going second. Which is just obscene, really. Outside of that, there's also the fact that it elongates the amount of time people take on their turns. Night March and Vespi Plume can both have up to 5 minutes on average, and possibly even 10-minute turns. I've seen a 10-minute turn once. It wasn't pretty. And that's the thing. If Night March is going second, they're taking a 5 to 10-minute turn off of an average hand, going through most of their deck, getting completely set up, and then ending their turn by taking 2 prizes. And due to the amount of cards Night March has, quite specifically, you can't really make an argument for that many of its counters outside of, say, Vileplume or Trevenant, if the Vileplume Trevenant person goes first. For instance, I actually have compiled a list of things that people commonly say counter Night March. First up is Seismitoad EX. Seismitoad EX, because it does so in the form of an attack, means that, well, congrats. You are guaranteed a free turn of items against a Seismitoad EX deck to set up. Yep, Vespi Plume. Against, say, Seismitoad EX with Lysander's trump card in the format, it definitely was a hard counter. But then we also didn't have Puzzle of Time and all the other shenanigans that we see today. Giratina EX is the same while you're locking them out of special energy, which means you prevent an attack, which makes it more sound than, say, Seismitoad, because you lock them out of resources that they don't... Like, you get 1 energy attachment if you're playing against a Turbo Giratina attack that goes off well. Assuming you're going... Yeah, either way. However, Turbo Giratina is just one Giratina variant, and there's a lot of others that actually do take several turns to attack, such as Metal Giratina, Metal Dragons, or even Toadtina, both of which take 2 turns. So, this pretty much means that unless you're facing Turbo Giratina, Night March gets at least 2 energy attachments, and also, again, unless you're facing Turbo Giratina, After you knock it out, unless it's late into the game where they have multiple things, and great. Look at my hand, isn't it wonderful? I can't compress the battle. So this is what I was talking about with Vespipum. That turn lasted upwards of 2 minutes, I think. Yeah, 3 minutes or so. And then they topped it off with an item lock. About half their deck in the discard pile. And 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100, 120, 140 plus damage. And the damage doesn't really matter all that much since I'm facing Night March. But here's the thing. I can teammates. What can I grab? What can I grab that would help me? Nothing, because decks are becoming more and more reliant on item cards as their main source of draw. Quite ironically, specifically the Battle Compressor decks. Anyways, back to it. So Giratina IX, if they get the first attack and you knock them out and they don't have another Giratina one attachment away, then you get another turn of doubles. Which is yet another problem. Aegislash-EX. Then there's a lot of stuff like Aegislash-EX, Trevenant from the XY base set, the Vileplume that we are staring down, which are just completely shut off by the card Hex Maniac, which turns off all abilities for a turn. Which pretty much means that well, oh no, I've got a bad hand. Pretty much means that you can always, as long as you have a Hex Maniac and you haven't discarded it against, say, Vileplume or Trevenant, it's pretty easy just to Versus Seeker Hex Maniac, or just play the Hex Maniac, get a turn of items, or in this case, just straight up knock something out with against Aegislash. And then what? You've just taken 2 prizes. And again, possibly on the very first turn, because with Versus Seeker and Puzzle of Time, you can just Battle Compressor away a Hex Maniac and then always have access to it if your opponent happens to start Aegislash. And so yeah, Night March, quite specifically, it may not be extremely broken on its own, but it's a byproduct of all the things they've released that accidentally helps Night March. Such as Battle Compressor, which was probably intentional, but cards like Fighting Fury Belt remove the option, because you add 40 HP, to just use Golbat Crobat for the sake of knocking something out. You don't have that option anymore. Just because, well, Golbat, Crobat, they do 30-60 damage. Or not 30-60, 20-30, I don't know, I'm not good at this game. So, yeah, 20 to 30 damage, cool. Against a Night Marcher with a Fighting Fury Belt attached. That's not enough. And oh joy, bad hand. I love how I'm talking about this as I'm being destroyed playing Night March. Same with Greninja Break, where either Joltik, both Joltik and Pumpkaboo take multiple Water Shurikens to knock something out. And then there's also Jolteon EX, which is probably the most solid one because it isn't turned off by Hex Maniac. But Jolteon, you can Lysander around it, or you can just run a Gallade if you're so inclined. I wouldn't recommend it, but the deck's so consistent it doesn't really matter. So Night March has cards to beat its counters, but they all have one thing in common, except for Seismitoad. Battle Compressor. Unless you are going second against a Trevenant or a Vespiplume deck, you will always have a turn to play Battle Compressor. And some of you might be thinking, well, that's great, what does it do? Well, against them, it gives you easy access to Hex Maniac. If you think most Vespiplume decks don't run Judge, most Trevenant decks, I do believe, also don't run Judge. So it pretty much turns it into, well, I've got these cards, right? So I'm just going to burn through my entire deck, get exactly what I need to set up, and then at the end of my turn, I can just try and grab Hex Maniac, going into my opponent's turn if I manage to go first. And then that's it. You can Hex Maniac, turn off their items, and go off. And that's not accounting for you just randomly getting Hex Maniac, even going second. But with Battle Compressor, you always have easy access to Hex Maniac, provided you are not under some form of constraining item lock. For instance, against Aegislash, where you just have the Hex Maniac, so it works. Or with Battle Compressor against, say, I don't know, you could literally pick any sort of counter. Let's take the Gallade option to beat out... Yeah, the Gallade option to beat out, whatchamacallit, I'm bad at this. Jolteon EX, there, that's it. Then, all of a sudden, you've got this Gallade, right? But there's just one problem. Well, not a problem, but what does... With Battle Compressor, that's what I'm trying to say this whole time, I'm bad at talking. With Battle Compressor, Gallade and the Maxie's engine is extremely viable and usable. Just because you can always discard it, and there's nothing wrong with it being viable, since Archie's Blastoise is kinda similar in this regard. And with Archie's Blastoise, it's pretty much... Well, it's the same thing. Do 180 plus damage on the first turn of the game. Because going second, just Archie's load up a Keldeo to do 170 damage. That's all thanks to Battle Compressor. Just get rid of your Blastoise, lower your hand down to 0, so the Battle Compressor does not put a card in your hand. It actually just gets rid of one. And then what do? You now, all of a sudden, have a Stage 2 on the field on the first turn, powering up a big basic EX with that can just hit for 170 damage. Most decks are either item locking decks, because most decks, the format's going to become Battle Compressor decks like Night March, or item lock decks like Trevenant and Vespiquen more specifically, that beat the Night March decks by going first. Which goes back around to, you have to win the opening coin flip to guarantee success. Which means, if the format does become Night March, and then, if Standard quite specifically, becomes Night March versus Vespiquen or Trevenant, games are going to come down to, can the Night March player get a turn of items? That's not a good format. That is definitely not... I mean... Just because, look at this. Now, all of a sudden, if a format is 2 decks of equal level and nothing else is good, that is a bad format. Especially if the viability of the deck is entirely determined by a coin flip. I.e., if the Vespiquen player goes first in a best-of-3 series, they will win, unless they miss turn 1 Vespi. Or not Vespi, Vileplume. Or it gets Lysander killed somehow. No, that's not gonna work. Running a Battle Compressor deck is almost risk-free unless you hit, say, Trevenant or Vileplume. Or, Jolteon, but that can be much more easily worked around since you still get your items and you still get your Battle Compressors. The speed of every single deck running Battle Compressor... Oh, and there's more than just Night March, Vespiquen, Archie's Blastoise. Definitely more than that. For instance, everybody's favorite... Well, Yveltal deck. You know, the one that's been around forever? Yeah, that one. Well, Yveltal, especially since the more popular variants in Standard are Yveltal or Gallade, which runs Battle Compressor to power up their Yveltal XY, or to power up their field with Yveltal XY, and also get the Maxie's engine online with Gallade, or an expanded Yveltal Archeops Gallade, I guess, since Zoroark's never run. pretty much means that Eviltal decks, they've got Dark Patch, so Battle Compressor away, say, a Gallade into Dark Energy with Dark Patch in your hand, pretty much turns a Battle Compressor into a Pokemon you want in your discard pile, and 2 free attachments for the turn. There's other less notable ones, like Bronzong, Electric, and Mega Manectric, all of which power up from the discard pile, and wholly use Battle Compressor as a way of functioning, though they don't depend on it as necessarily much as, say, Night March or Vespiquen, both of which I'm convinced would not be around without Battle Compressor. What do I have in here? I have to, if I puzzle the time, I should get back a lamp in. So, it is pretty much becoming this, actually. Let's say, as an example, let's say you go to a tournament, and the decks are Night March, Vespiquen Vileplume, Eviltal Archeops Gallade, or Eviltal Zoroark Gallade. I guess I'll use Expanded since it's more relevant. Electric, Bronzong, Mega Manectric, and Entei. Just looking at that, all of these decks, and those are all some of the most popular decks in the format, actually. It basically means that all of those decks run Battle Compressor. Oh, and I forgot Blastoise, that one's Compressor too. Pretty much meaning that you're likely, almost every deck benefits from Battle Compressor. Oh crap, this changed. In some way, shape, or form, unless you are playing, say, Primal Groudon, which does use Mega Turbo, but I don't think it uses Battle Compressor that often. Instead, it just sits behind Wobbuffet and slows everything else down. So I guess that's like the biggest lesson I'm going to give before I jump off after this match. Battle Compressor is going to turn the format into speed decks that revolve around hitting extremely quickly on the first turn, like Night March in Standard, Archie's Blastoise, and Expanded, or decks that slow the format, or slow these speed decks down, and Eviltal, because Eviltal just has a good shot against everything. And that's pretty much it. I mean, one could argue the format is already heading that way, or is already there, but it's rather strange. And if the format is there, that just proves my point, since most competitively viable decks run Battle Compressor. So yeah, I guess if there were a poll for it to be banned, I would definitely 100% support a ban, because the format's been getting way too fast for a while, and I think this 4 weeks of states just prove it by virtue of the fact that Night March won at least 35% of the states in the Masters Division only. That's not even accounting for junior and senior divisions. Vespiquen is also one of the biggest contenders because it item locks and hits heavy at the same time. So yeah, the format is bad. That's pretty much what it is. It's just a bad format. And look, even there, a Battle Compressor. Discard 3 supporters, tech supporters to get them back later in the match with Versus Seeker, or Puzzle of Time. Every single deck can benefit from Battle Compressor in some way. Every single deck. And, well, you're like, if it's... And now, because I said that, someone's probably going to say, well, ban Ultra Ball, since every deck benefits from it in some way. I guess I can see that line of reasoning, but Ultra Ball is different, since sure, you can advance your format, but with that, think of every single deck without Ultra Ball. What if your opponent plays Judge and you draw nothing, but you draw an Ultra Ball? Ultra Ball turns into a free hand because of Shaman, which is its own problem that I might eventually cover in a future video. And I've been drawing like crap. But yeah, other staples do not compare to the likes of Battle Compressor for numerous reasons. Other staples like Ultra Ball or Versus Seeker give you access to one card. With Battle Compressor, one card at one time, I should say. Battle Compressor gives you access to any card at any time with Puzzle of Time. Extra damage output in the form of Night March or Vespiquen based decks. Or any supporter you need. Need that Hex Maniac to turn off Aegislash? Battle Compressor it away, Versus Seeker it. Got Judged through Battle Compressor Versus Seeker? Battle Compressor away as Sycamore Versus Seeker it. Just got knocked out and desperately need Pumpkaboo and double colorless energy? Battle Compressor, discard the two of them. Puzzle of Time, get them both back, and all of a sudden you are good to go. Battle Compressor takes away the element of running your opponent out of resources on a technicality, which is what Puzzle of Time does more specifically, but Puzzle of Time and Shaming X I might cover in future videos like this. Anyways, thank you all so much for listening to me ramble. I do think Battle Compressor being banned would be helpful for the format, and I would like you all to leave some opinions in the comments. Thanks, bye.